Services. Yes, please. Okay, welcome everyone to the book launch of Gold for the Dead. I always look, I have this terror of reading the wrong title, Emily. It hasn't happened. Thank you. It's great to have Ann Aptaker and Felice Cohen back at the Bureau. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder, along with my lovely partner, Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. And the Bureau is an all-volunteer, independent queer bookstore that we founded back in 2012 and that has been here at the center since 2014. And as an all-volunteer queer bookstore, we rely on both funds and donations to keep this machine going. And we definitely need your help at all times. So I'm gonna pass a bag around. There are many ways to help us. So we definitely encourage you to buy Ann's book, other books. That's one great way to help us. If you're able to make a donation, great. There's also a QR code for Venmo. And the big prize is if you could sign up to become a monthly donor, we would really appreciate it because then we have a regular amount of money that we can count on. If you have questions about any, and that's tax deductible. Woohoo! So I'll pass this around. And there's some change in the bag. Those of you watching online, if you want to find out more about donating monthly, you can go to our website, bgsqd.com, and click on donate, and you'll find out more about that. If you want to do it quick and easy, just go to Venmo at bgsqd. Let's see. Before I introduce Ann and Felice, I wanted to give a land acknowledgement. So the Bureau recognizes that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. And the Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to recognize the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. The Bureau also recognizes Palestinian liberation as a fundamental part of our collective queer liberation, and we strongly encourage you to take one of our free zines at the back about why we feel it's important for queer people to speak out in solidarity with Palestinians. And now, Ann Aptaker's Cantor Gold Crime Series has been the recipient of Lambda Literary and Golden Crown Literary Society's Goldie Awards. Her short stories have appeared in the anthologies Fedora, Mickey Finn, 21st Century Noir, Private Dicks and Disco Balls, Scattered, Smothered, Covered, and Chunked. This is fun. Our Happy Hours, LGBT Voices from the Gay Bars, Switchblade Magazine, Black Cat Mystery Magazine, the Guns and Tacos novella series, and the online zine Punk Soul Poet. Her short story, Neon Women, was selected for inclusion in the 2025 Best American Mystery and Suspense Anthology. Felice Cohen is the author of the 2023 Goldie winner, Half In, a coming-of-age memoir of forbidden love about a secret age gap affair she had at 23 with her 57-year-old female boss. 90 Lessons for Living Large in 90 Square Feet or more, inspired by the viral YouTube video of her tiny NYC studio, and What Papa Told Me about her grandfather's life before, during, and after the Holocaust. Felice has been featured on Good Morning America, NBC, NPR, Time, Globe and Mail, and more. Felice splits her time between NYC and Cape Cod. Please give them both a very warm welcome.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming. And to piggyback onto Greg's introduction, just to say that it is absolutely wonderful that the hostages have been returned, their families reunited. and of course that the Palestinians in Gaza are no longer suffering under war. So irrespective of anybody's political feelings, just the idea of having 5 minutes of peace is something to rejoice. Having said that, a little bit about the Cantor Gold series. Most of you know, many of you know, that Cantor Gold, the series takes place in the 1950s, at a time when being a member of the LGBTQ community could land you in jail or worse, into the loony bin, where you suffered horrific procedures. Cantor is an art thief and a smuggler, and very much an out butch dyke. And she refuses to live in the closet. So why is she an art thief and a smuggler? Well, she feels that if the law is going to label her a criminal just for who she takes to dinner and to bed, that she doesn't owe the law any legitimacy or honor at all. So she becomes an art thief and a smuggler as opposed to a legitimate art dealer. This book, Gold for the Dead, takes place in 1958. And I'm going to read, instead of doing the usual thing of reading, say, a 5-minute selection, I'm going to read 2 small selections that give you sort of 2 sides of Cantor. The street smart, savvy, knows where the cards are played or how to play them. And then the softer, the sexy part, because she is extremely sexy. So, to begin, I'll begin with literally the opening, chapter 1, and just a little bit to introduce you to Cantor. So it's early November 1958 in New York City at 6 p.m. Trust is a hard thing to come by. Most people, even the nicest people, the type of people who give potluck dinners and watch each other's kids, they'll give you the shaft if it means they come out on top, or if they just don't have time for you. Can't blame them, really. Life's a tough game. A handful of people win, most just get by, everybody else loses. Too many people, even those nice people, want to put me into the losing slot because of the way I dress, a dame in gentlemen's suits, and for my preference for the love and lust of women. It's the same story in my outlaw world, just a lot more dangerous. Greed backed up by guns does a lot of the talking. To stay alive, I have to stay sharp, because every time I steal a painting, a fancy jewel, or some other treasure, and smuggle it into town for clients who are generally the winners of life's crap game, I have to navigate a treacherous maze of dirty dealing. So when I find anyone who's the real deal, who not only keeps their word, but knows what the word is, I value their life as much as my own. So that's Cantor the savvy, the street smart. So now we're going to get just a little teeny tiny itty bitty bit of Cantor the sexy out dyke. And in this, the love interest, or the lust interest actually, in this little segment here is a woman named Lily Vardanian, who was herself an outlaw, who is a pickpocket extraordinaire. So she shares Cantor's outlaw world. All right. Looking at me with sudden tenderness, Lily traces the scars on my face with her fingertip, starting with the small knife-shaped scar above my upper lip, then slides to the little slice in the corner of my mouth. As she glides her fingertip down to the straight line on my chin, and then up to the jagged slash along my left cheek, and finally back to the small curved number above my right eye, she gives a little and a whispery, "Your life is written in these scars, Cantor. Maybe that's why I find them strangely attractive. And those threads of gray in your hair add a bit of worldly wise seasoning." Her touch ignites my lust for life. By the time she pulls my hand around to the zipper along the back of her dress, I'm all hers, flesh, bone, and soul. As I slowly pull the zipper down, she lifts her face to mine and kisses me. It's a confident kiss, a demanding kiss, the kind that insists I give in. I start by sliding her dress off. The next hours until dawn are filled with sexual demands made by each of us, what Lily wants of me for her pleasure and what I need from her for mine. Sometimes it's a battle, sometimes it's a surrender, but it's the stuff of life. It's our outlaw lives expressed as lust. So there you have the two sides of Cantor Gold. And now that I've introduced her, I'm going to bring up Felice, who's going to ask me pointed questions.
It's a test. Before we start, I wanted to say last year, Ann and I met at a cafe up near Columbia. And I said, what are you working on? She said, I'm working on the 6th book of the series. And I said, tell me about the series. And she told me a little bit about it. She said, start with the first book. Criminal Gold, you have to start with the first book. I said, okay. So I left and I walked up to my girlfriend's who lives in Harlem. And we're going out to dinner. But first we said, let's just bring the recycle down. So I bring the recycle in and there's a table with a couple books on it. I said, okay, let me see. I'm a reader. Let me see what the books are. And I pick up the first one. No, I pick up the second one and it says Ann Apteker, Criminal Gold. And I got the chills again. I mean, I texted Ann right away. I said, what are the odds of that? So I like to say it was Bashir that I found the book, which I read, I think, in 2 days.
And you
I've been a
emailed
fan.
me.
Yeah.
You emailed me.
Right away. I was
Oh,
like,
I'm so excited.
wow, that's crazy. But we thought we would talk about the series in general because, there's not so much to get into the specifics of each book, but, the books are all told in New York City, kind of the grittiness of New York. You can see it, the dim. Why did you pick that era?
That era of the post-war New York has always fascinated me. On the one hand, it was very much a golden era, no pun intended with her name, but it was. Post-war America, and particularly New York, was affluent, it was prosperous for most people, and even for traditionally marginalized people, because there was almost full employment, everybody had a few dollars in their pocket. But right underneath that golden sheen of prosperity and people living the American dream and people living the good life, right underneath that was what film noir came out of. When the soldiers came back from the Second World War, they didn't come back smiling, all of them. They saw terrible things, and it affected their view of life in America. At the same time, you had the rise of organized crime. Now, organized crime was around even in the 20s and 30s, we know, with the Depression and Prohibition. But because there was so much money really laying around in the 50s, organized crime took over quite a bit of New York. The docks, for certain, of which, where Cantor does a lot of business because she smuggles things in through the harbor system. So this dark and light of that period always fascinated me. And as far as queer culture, I wanted to have a protagonist who was very brave, but without having to, become Steven Seagal of beating everybody up or, some cheesy kind of thing. And to be, to make the decision to be an out queer person at a time when it was illegal to do so automatically sets her up as very courageous. So putting all those things together, she had to be, the books had to take place at a time that was both dark and light, and that allowed this protagonist to live her truth and her courage without getting, as an author, without getting preachy about it. So that was my real reasoning, and I've always been fascinated by that period.
So you knew the time you wanted to write in, and how did you come up with Cantor Gold?
I had thought about her actually for a long time. And, some of you actually know the story behind Cantor. originally I had her as a private investigator. But when I was living in San Francisco doing art projects out there, I actually had the opportunity, you know, the universe is funny, it provides. And it was at that time I started thinking seriously about writing a book about, with Cantor Gold as the protagonist in the 1950s, blah, blah, blah. And I wound up, strictly by luck, working for a private investigations firm and writing their reports. The detectives, the operatives would come in with their notes and their videotapes, their surveillance tapes, and I would have to look at them and then put it into a very dry narrative. The suspect went here, they did that, and so on, for the client or the courts or whomever. And I got to see the criminal justice system really up close and personal. And I got to see criminals up close and personal. And I realized to have an out dyke in the 1950s who has the courage to live her life out, she could not be part of the corruption of the right side of the law. She had to be a criminal in order to maintain her integrity. So that's where, you know, she came about. It was by stroke of luck that I wound up working in a situation that I could see the criminal justice system, how it worked, how it failed. I could see criminals. Now, criminals are, you know, they interest me, but there's all different kinds of criminals. There are some very evil people out there, you know, the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world and the, you know, Gacy's and all of that. And there are people who are mentally ill that do terrible things. Well, putting all those folks aside for the moment, most other criminals that I saw, you know, thieves and fraud, you know, people who perpetrated frauds and violent criminals and so on, most of that came from rage and other social justice oppressions. They live in a different world. If the floor was made of glass, if we were out on the street, if the pavement were made of glass, we would see this other world living under our feet. And the people who live there are fully aware that the rest of us are walking on their heads. And so what we would consider a crime, you know, petty theft or even grand theft, workers' comp fraud, you know, oh, I slipped and fell, I can't work, you know, and then once you lift your car's bumper and whatnot, you know, we saw that sort of thing. What we would consider crime in that world is often an economic opportunity. And if some of those folks didn't take advantage of those opportunities, they would be considered as irresponsible as we would be if we gambled our money away or did something, you know, stupid things, didn't take a job or whatever. It's just a different set of rules. And that being the case, I knew that Cantor had to be on the criminal side to keep her courage, because not only does she have to battle the law as a queer person, she also now lives in a very dangerous world of gangsters and killers and whatnot. But it all went to keep her integrity as a character and to, again, profile her as somebody who was very courageous.
I mean, go ahead, sure.
Did you ever speak with any of the people who you're referring to, who see crime as opportunity?
Oh, yes, yes.
In your research?
Oh, yes,
Can you
yeah.
talk about that?
Yeah, I'll give you, yes, I will give you, okay, Debbie Deffenbaugh is her name. And she's now unfortunately in prison. She didn't make it, which broke my heart when I learned a few years ago that she was in prison. Debbie Deffenbaugh worked at a McDonald's or Burger King or one of those places. And she was very young, she was 21 years old. And she lived, you know, the wrong side of the tracks, the whole thing. And she slipped and fell at work. Now she was young, she bruised her tush. I mean, you know, she really didn't get all that hurt. But she recognized an opportunity, say, oops, workers' comp, I can't work, you know, and she perpetrated an insurance fraud. Now, in California at least, because I was working in San Francisco, in California, fully at the time, over 80, close to 90% of workers' comp claims are paid, no questions asked, if somebody really got hurt. But the rest, there's usually red flags. And of those red flags, after investigation, they got paid too. It's like, it seemed a little off, but no, it turned out to be legit. Debbie was one of those, we didn't seem so legit, and it wasn't. We sent one of our detectives out to do surveillance at her house, because she was supposed to be home and not able to work. And she wasn't home, actually, this first day of surveillance. Now, to give you, you know, some people's lives are just really hard, and hers was one of them. There was a dog running around on the street, and a car came along and hit the dog and killed the dog. And nobody on the street did anything about it. And so our guy, Mike, the detective who was out there that day, he broke his cover for a minute and called animal control and this and that and the other. Got the dog taken away. Turned out to be Debbie's dog.
Now we know where Debbie Downer comes from.
Yeah. Turned out, so, you know, Debbie, who lives on the wrong side of the tracks, never got a break in her life, and now her dog's dead. You know, it's like, oh. Okay, the next day, Mike is out there again. Debbie is home, sees her car in this, you know, gravel driveway, and it's one of these houses that has the car up on blocks and, you know, garbage and junk in the driveway, you know, in the front, no, the whole thing. And parked in back of Debbie is another sort of junky old car. So evidently she had company. Okay, so Mike waits and waits and waits. The company comes out a little while later, an hour or so later, and it's two guys. And they get in their car and they try and pull out, and they couldn't back up because their front fender was hooked onto the back fender of Debbie's car. So Debbie comes out, and the guys, you know, two schmagegs, they don't know what to do about it. Debbie comes out. Now, this is a woman, a young woman who said she was hurt so bad she can't work, this and that, lifts the front end of the car. So, and we had this now on tape. So, poor Debbie, I mean, so naturally, you know, we had to turn the tape over, and I'm writing this, and it's like, you know, the dog's dead, Debbie gets caught, and my heart's breaking. And I'm writing this stuff. So then, you know, after the tapes get sent to the DA and all of that, she gets called in to give a deposition, and she was lying through her teeth. But the judge, bless his heart, he saw something in her to give her a chance. And he let her off with a warning. Because she was young, and I guess he'd seen enough of this crap go by that it was time to give someone a break. And he did. So Debbie lived to fight another day, but I learned later, some years later, she didn't make it, and I learned she was in prison for theft and other crimes. So that's Debbie Deffenbaugh. As far as the corruption of the criminal justice system, we had another guy. The Mendocino County Sheriff's Department asked us to investigate one of their guys who also was trying to pull an insurance fraud, a similar workers' comp case. And he said he got hurt on the job, he couldn't work, blah, blah, blah. So we followed him to Sears. He goes to Sears. Okay, goes to Sears, where he buys a lawn tractor. All right, he buys a lawn tractor. So the salespeople take the lawn tractor out to the parking lot where his pickup truck is, and he helps the guys lift the lawn tractor into the truck. So we get him. Then the next day, not only we go to his house, and he happened to be moving the next day from his house in Mendocino town, and he bought himself a ranch or something. Where he got the money for the ranch, God knows. He was a deputy sheriff, so we followed him, and he's carrying a TV set and this and that and the other. So we get all this stuff, and we take it to court. And I'm sitting there in the courtroom, and another mic. We had two mics, big mic and little mic. who were the investigators on this. And Mike is on the stand, and he's showing the tapes for the jury. And we got the guy, cold, carrying stuff. The judge dismissed the case for lack of evidence. So the fix was in. So having seen Debbie Deffenbaugh and other people like her, and then what's going on now with the immigration raids, really strikes a chord in all of us, but it's very familiar to me because that was going on. We had to defend and get the goods on illegal raids there's a lot of Mexican population in California, Northern California. A lot of them work in, of course, the Central Valley, in the agricultural industry there, and in restaurants in San Francisco and so on. So this is, what's going on now is nothing new, it's just larger, it's just more intense. So that's where all of this came from. That's where, that gave me, that experience of working for the private investigator gave me the insight to write about the criminal world. Now, of course, then I take some artistic license with it and don't really romanticize it such, but you make it an adventure. That crime is not just only crime, it's also an adventure.
Well, it is fun to go on this adventure with her. I mean, you're cheering from her from the moment you start reading, for sure. And then the other characters, so there's one, Mom Scheinbaum, who is based, you said, on two people. One is Friederike Mandelbaum, who was one of the top crime fighters here in New York City. I love, not fighters, criminals.
She was a fence.
Criminal, yeah. She was a great fence. And that,
Never got caught.
No, it was incredible. She even fled to Canada, came back. But you also based on another character. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, Mom Scheinbaum, as Felice said, is based on Friederike Mandelbaum, who was the most successful fence in the history of crime in the United States. Never got caught, so on and so forth. Had the politicians in her pocket, blah, blah, blah. But as far as her personality is concerned, she's based on my mother. There you go. Make of that what you will.
The part where she was always feeding people, or no?
Well, yeah. She always has. Whenever Cantor is there at her on Lower East Side place, Mom Scheinbaum's a widow by the time the books are written, and Cantor does business with her because she was a fence, of stolen goods. Whenever Cantor goes over there, there's always a loaf of honey cake on the table, of course, from Weinstein's Bakery on the Lower East Side.
In this latest book, her best friend, Cantor's best friend in this book, is a white cisgendered male. Why did you choose that kind of best friend?
Yeah, and people have come at me for this, in the queer community. Well, for any of us here who live in the queer community, that's not the only place we live. And a lot of books, not all by any means, but a lot of books written by LGBTQ authors for the LGBTQ readership, all the characters, or most of the characters, if not all, but a great many of the characters are gay. The protagonist, of course, is queer. But then there's the queer best friend, and there's the queer partner, the business partner, and the queer associate, and the queer teacher, and the queer boss, and everybody's queer. Well, that's not the world. Most of us here who are also queer have straight friends, and live in a world where we deal with straight people. Some of whom we like very much, and who like us back. It happens. Some of our best friends are queer. And in Cantor's case, especially since she lives in the underworld, in the outlaw world, yes, there are gay people there, which, there's Rosie, the cab driver who's, friend with benefits, and Lily Vardanian, who we just read about here, and then others other femme fatales in the series of books who are, queer for Cantor. But it was time for Cantor to go to bat for someone who went to bat for her. And I read you a part of the opening part of chapter 1, and as the chapter progresses, we learn about this best friend, Nick Fortunato, and why they are such good friends. They were friends. They both grew up in Coney Island and since childhood. And they've gone to bat for each other. They've had each other's backs literally since they were kids. So it was time, as the series went on, to have Cantor, who always lived in the real world, to now literarily live in the real world, and have her go to bat for a guy who had her back when it was important to have her back. And that's what I did.
When you wrote the first book, did you think it was going to be a series? Did you
Oh,
have
yeah.
that in mind?
Yeah, right from the get-go, I knew it was. And right now I'm writing the next book, which will be the final book in the series. It'll finish it all out. And I knew it was going to end on that date at that time, and in conjunction with a particular historic moment, historic happening. And that's what I'm writing right now. Now, I didn't know how many books it was going to take to get there, but that's the one I'm writing right now.
So how did you come up with each of the different stories lines?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a hard one for me to answer because of the way that I write. I just sit down and write. Okay, what is Cantor doing now? Some writers, quite rightly so, they'll give themselves a what if this and that and the other thing. And I don't do that because I haven't a clue. What if what? I don't know. I just sit down when I want to write each Cantor book. When I want to write anything, I just sit down and let a story spool out. The only time that I can't do that is when I'm invited to submit a short story into an anthology that has a particular theme. Then I have to address that theme. But aside from that, if I'm writing my own things and can approach it any way I want to, and even the ones where they have a theme, I'll address the theme, but as far as what happens, the plot, I don't know until I sit down to start writing it, and it just spools out. I just sort of go someplace and a story starts to happen.
I like that. I like that you have the ending in mind. It probably gives you kind of a direction, a map where you're going to go.
Well, it does as far as the succession of books, and each year, it moves through the 1950s. But in each book, I don't always know who the guilty party is until Cantor does. I don't know, because I don't plot everything out beforehand. That would bore me silly. I would just drop dead of boredom. And maybe I'm just lazy, I don't know. But I just sit down and I don't know who the guilty party is. And the funny part about it is when I do reveal who the guilty party is, when it occurs to me, when it gets there, and Cantor figures it out, and meaning I've figured it out, I realize that subconsciously I've put these clues, so to speak, or Easter eggs, through the book, so that the resolution is believable. It's not just something I've made up for the heck of it. But it's all very organic, without any preconceived ideas. The only time that I had an idea of who the guilty party was in the second book, Tarnished Gold. And I thought it was this person who was the guilty party, and I said, well, but maybe not, and I just wrote and let it go, but it turned out, yes, that's who it was. But that's the only time. I'm usually surprised when the resolution comes.
Well, speaking of clues, are there clues in the first 6 books that will kind of tell us how it's going to end?
No. Well, I take that
You don't know
back.
yet.
I don't. Well, I'm about halfway through this book that I'm writing, this final book. There aren't clues, so to speak, about how it's going to end and so on. But as the series develops, you get to know Cantor and you sort of see her mature, and there's not really clues, but you sort of go on her life's journey with her. So I hope that's about all I can explain on that.
Each book seems, I mean, she's about the same age. There's no real time jump. Is there a time jump in this last one?
A little bit. There's a little bit, yeah. I mean, it moves through the 50s, so there's sometimes there's a year or 2 or 3 between. But she's, there's really no difference, say, when someone's 40 and the time they're 43.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
But in this book, which takes place in 1958, the first book takes place in 1949. So this is 9 years later, and she's starting to feel a little bit of her age now. And in the last book, age and aging into life plays a large part. And there's a bit of a time jump. Not an excessive one, but a bit,
Is she gonna retire?
No, she's not going to retire, but life may change direction a little bit. I'm not sure yet, but it could. It could. I don't know any of this until it happens when I'm writing.
So you don't know if she's gonna have a happy ending, maybe
I don't know.
find true love?
I don't know yet. It won't have a happy ending in the sense of the romance trope, we have the HEA, the happily ever after, or the hopefully ever after. It's not that, but it could end on a more happier note than the others, or maybe not. I don't know yet.
How did you come up with her name?
Before I started working for the private investigator, I originally had her last name as Cantor. And she went through a series in my head of different first names, a whole list. I'm not even going to go in, but just a list of first names. None of them really sat well with me, but name after name after name after name. And literally one afternoon at home, I was doing something mundane, cleaning or washing the dishes, or and it's just like boom, her first name has to be Cantor, and I'll find a last name for her, and gold just came out. So that's how I picked her name.
I like that.
But the Cantor part had to be there, even when it was supposed to be her last name, because as some of you know, in the Jewish tradition, a cantor is the ritual singer in the synagogue. Now, Cantor is not particularly religious, and I am not particularly religious, but I do think of Cantor as my ritual singer. She sort of sings her life in a way, in her criminal life. She is a life force. She really just pushes through life in a very positive way. She's as you know, she's very street smart, very savvy. She knows how the game is played, and she plays it very well. And she outsmarts the danger that is always coming at her. So she's tough as nails. On the other hand, though, she's very, very human. She has this sense of life. She really loves living. So she is a ritual singer. She sings her life. She sings her criminal life in a literary way, just by doing what she does in the way that she does it.
That just made me think, is she gonna, and they say you sing to the police, is she gonna do that at the end and turn into all the bad guys?
No. She will never snitch. She will never snitch. It's funny you should ask that, because that issue comes up in this book that I'm currently writing. The idea of snitching is just, and in a short story that I wrote, I forget which anthology it was in. It was in Crime Inc., the iconic, Crime Inc. iconic that my publisher, Bywater Books, put out. And it was an anthology of stories by queer writers, that all the stories had to be inspired or reference a gay icon, a queer icon, either currently, historically, or in fiction, or a real person, or so on. And in the story that I wrote, snitching actually plays a part. And in Cantor's case, she'd sooner die. Never going to snitch.
So when this series is done, do you think you want to start another series or a one-off?
A few years ago, I wrote a book called A Crime of Secrets, and it takes place in New York in 1899. And in that case, in that book, the two protagonists, the crime solvers, are two women who are a couple, and they are private investigators. But they also do not hide their relationship, which, you know, causes them problems. But they insist on living their lives. But they are very successful private detectives. The two women, Finn and Dvora, are really different. Finn grew up on the docks of Hell's Kitchen, literally by the docks, as a very tough, butch, outlaw, juvenile delinquent, and, you know, really tough kid from the wrong side of the tracks. And Dvora is a Fifth Avenue socialite who has been disowned by her parents because she took up with Finn. So they are very different, but they complement each other, and they are crazy about each other. So I would like to get back to them, to Finn and Dvora, and write another book about their exploits in Gaslight, New York. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Oh,
I
glad you
love
like
all
it.
of them in New York. So the Cantor Gold series, I mean, it would make for a great TV series. Any thought of that?
Speak to that gentleman over there in the big green hat.
The producer?
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
That would be great.
Yeah.
This was awesome. Well, do we have any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
When you write the Mom Shinedown series
Mhm.
next, will Cantor appear in it?
Well, she would have to, yeah, right. Absolutely, the Mom Shine. You want to make the TV show about Mom Shine?
That would be a great spinoff. Call it Honey Cake.
Cindy?
Yeah, can I ask two questions?
Of course.
They're different. One is just, can you give us a little of the setup for this book? I've read all the books and I love them.
Thank you.
That's why I'm here, also
Thank you.
because I want to be supportive of you. Just what's the setup on this one, and then I'll ask the second question.
Okay, the setup, as I say, it's New York in 1958, and the setup is Cantor is on her way to her friend Nick's apartment for Nick's birthday. Every year since they were kids, they celebrate each other's birthdays. Nick is a bookie, a successful bookie, and of course we know Cantor is a thief. So on Nick's birthday, and his name is Nick Fortunato, he's an Italian guy, so every year on Nick's birthday, Cantor goes to his apartment with a bottle of expensive Italian wine and gives Nick $10 for a horse, for him to put on a horse that he knows will lose, because it's his birthday. Okay. On her birthday, he goes to her apartment with a bottle of Chivas Regal, which is her favorite drink of choice, and the $10 she gives him is for a horse he knows will win. That's her birthday present. Cantor gets to his apartment, and he's not there, and there's blood on the carpet. Not to give away too much, but he is not yet dead, but he will be. And so the setup is that Cantor is going to, as I said in some of the PR, how far would she go to get justice for a friend? And she does put her life on the line to get justice for Nick.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I'll let Larry ask you. The second question is, in I think the third book, the one that's in Cuba. That takes
Yeah,
place in Cuba.
that's the third book. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's the fourth book.
Oh, the fourth, sorry.
Yeah.
In that book, you kill off a very significant character. I won't say who it is, but I think you know who I'm talking about. That devastates Cantor.
Oh, yes. Well, are you sure?
I don't know. It seemed like it to me. I was wondering if you had much pushback from readers about that.
People, it's not so much pushback, but people do ask, is she
Okay.
dead? Is she dead? Is she dead? Is she dead?
Okay.
And I'm not telling.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
And the reason I'm not telling is most people assume that she's dead, and I wrote it in a way that, yes, you would assume that she's dead. But when you read it again, it's like, is she really dead? And I wrote it that way because at the time that I wrote it, I didn't know if she was dead. and I didn't know if I wanted her dead yet. That question will be answered in this last book. I will definitively answer that question.
Sounds good.
I have made up my mind whether she's dead or not, and it will be answered in this last book. Anybody else have any questions? What time is it, by the way? 8. Yeah.
Just a few comments. I've read some of the books, not all of them, and I really enjoy it. And I agree, they're very cinematic and should be a TV show, definitely. I put some thought to.
You hook me up with Rosie O'Donnell to try to get him out.
Okay, anyway. But, and I love the symbolism behind the name. How you came to that, and it certainly lends to some really clever titles as well. So my question is, maybe you won't want to answer it. Do you see yourself in Cantor in any way?
Yes, of course I do. All of the characters in the books, every single one of them, is based on a real person, either someone historic, like the one in Cuba. There is a real person. Meyer Lansky plays a big part in the book. But there are other characters whom I've made up, but they are based on either historical figures or people that I know. In all of the books, all of the characters are based on people that I know, but they are all filtered through me as the author. And any of you who've been an author know that anybody you write is filtered through you. So there's a bit of me in all of the characters, primarily Cantor. Now, I don't have Cantor's courage, God knows, by any means. And there's no way that I could live Cantor's life. There's no way I could be as ruthless as Sig L'Oreal, who is the major crime lord in all of the books. But they all get filtered through me, so there's a part of me in all of these characters. But primarily, of course, Cantor, she's the protagonist. There's a lot about Cantor I wish I could be. There's some of me in Cantor that already is. And there's other parts of Cantor that, thank God, I'm not like that. But everybody gets filtered through me, sure. Anybody who's written anything, whether it's a script, or a book, you take pieces of yourself, and there they are.
Or a dream.
Or a dream.
You dream about other characters, and
They all come.
Composite characters.
Absolutely, yeah.
You said there's a big historic event that you're leading up to. Can you give us a hint of what that is?
No. Because the first sentence of the new book starts with that historic event, and that event, now it is not the assassination of JFK. Put that away.
It's 1958.
It's not 1958. We've moved on.
That's
Yeah.
63.
Is that the World's Fair?
It's not the World's Fair.
Oh.
Something happened in this upcoming book that caused a cultural shift, not only in this country for sure, and even to some extent in the world on the cultural level. And the first sentence of the book tells you what it is. And the shift happens.
Is it May 5th?
Shift happens.
Is it May 5th, 1960?
60?
No.
Okay.
We'll come back here when that book is ready. You can read it then.
Yeah, the very first sentence was like, phew. And what's really interesting is I knew that this event was going to be one of the underpinnings of the book. And I started writing, and off I go, and I got, I don't know, a chapter in, maybe more than a chapter in, and it just hit me saying, phew, this is just nonsense. And that first sentence, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and, I threw out a whole first chapter. And once I put that first sentence down and established that particular moment in American culture, then the book was off and running. Yeah. and everybody's guessing what it is. Ha ha ha.
It's still in the fifties, right?
I'm not telling.
Hold on.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Do you wake up, do you have dreams about the book?
Oh God, yes. Yeah. I mean, I wrote a blog post a few years ago about what it's like to be a crime writer. And one of the things that I mentioned was, it's amazing that, you know, crime writers, mystery writers are not all, you know, nuts. I mean, do you know what it's like to think day after day, year after year of ways of killing people? And stay sane?
It's just like scrolling through social media.
Yeah.
I mean, so you wrote the Cantor Gold series from her perspective, and she was a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And the other book with the two women,
Mhm.
Deborah and Finn, they are, you know, the other side of the law.
Well, yes, they are now. Devorah has always been,
Right. Social
but
media.
Finn has
Right.
been a
Yeah.
criminal, and so the reason why they are so successful as private investigators is Devorah, even though her family has disowned her, she still has contacts, you know, among the rich and powerful. So when they have a case, Devorah can maneuver her way through the upper echelons and the legal world, while Finn can get down into the underworld and, you know, investigate
Right.
there. So, and between them, they can get the information needed to solve the crime.
Was that a conscious decision? When
Yeah.
You put
Yeah. After having worked for the private investigator, even in my short stories, for those of you who've read my short stories, I really can't write about good, pure people. It's just not happening. I don't know those people. I'm not sure I want to know those people.
So you won't be writing a memoir.
Well, but after having seen the criminal justice system and the corruption of police departments and courts and so on, I find that world, the criminal world, to be much more interesting to write about, and to talk to address issues that matter to me. You know, justice or the lack of it. Who gets to make the rules? Why do people break the rules? Like Debbie Deffenbaugh, you know, why do people break the rules? And there's usually a damn good reason. So most of my stuff, even the short stories, the one that was selected for the Best American Mystery and Suspense that it gets released next week, actually, the 25th. She's the leading character. Actually, is a private investigator, but she's a private investigator in the 70s when Times Square was really seedy, and she's very comfortable in that world. So she's not exactly, you know, pure of heart and all of that. Good guys just bore the hell out of me. Yeah.
That's good.
Yep. Well, anybody else have any, you know, probing questions you want to ask me? No? Felice, you have anything else you want to ask me?
That's good. I'm excited for
Well, now, here's the, you have Crime Inc. Oh,
I was
yeah,
gonna
there it
say,
is. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have, of course, copies of all of the Cantor Gold series, and then we also have Crime Inc., which we did an event for, which sadly Anne was not able
I
to be
know.
here for.
I was supposed to be here, but I got COVID. So there I was.
But the book remains.
That the book remains. Yeah, in that, the gay icon, the queer icon that I selected for that was, what's his name? I'm having an Alzheimer's moment here. Let me see the book for a second.
Refer to your notes.
Yeah, I don't know why I can't remember his name. I love his music, and I'm having a heck of a time remembering his name. Table of contents.
Give us a hint, maybe, no?
Yeah, he wrote all that wonderful. He wrote Lush Life, and I'm having a heck of.
Oh, you're talking about
Billy Strayhorn, thank you very much, yeah. Who was a gay black man, who worked a lot with Duke Ellington. And he wrote Lush Life when he was very young, actually before he met Ellington. And I've always loved that song. Even before I knew that Strayhorn was gay, I loved that song. And when I found out later that he was gay, many years later that he was gay, the song made even more sense to me. Even though he doesn't mention being gay in the song, but just you could hear the pain of living a closeted life as a gay black man during the era of the macho jazz musician. And there he was, this somewhat effeminate gay black man at a time when it was very dangerous for him to be so. So that was my reference point for the story called Heartbreak Alley. So here we come to the best part of the evening where you all buy books and I sign them.
Yay! Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Felice.
Thank you all for coming, absolutely.
Good night, online audience.